Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast, where we celebrate individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. Today's episode is sponsored by our good friends at Rock Creek Coffee Roasters, home of small batch, freshly roasted coffee. Who doesn't like freshly roasted coffee? Our guest today is Colin True. Colin is an outdoor enthusiast and host of his own podcast called the Rock Fight Podcast. Colin, it's a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series.
Howard, great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Fantastic. Now, Colin and I exchanged some messages on LinkedIn. He's also had I'm sure the pleasure of being on a good friend of mine, his podcast, Rick Says, the Outdoor Biz Podcast. And so, hey, if Colin, you must be good because Rick is a tough customer, man. Not everybody gets on his show.
Yeah, he's in demand. He's probably been doing it the longest of any of us, right? I mean, I guess Fitzcahall and the Dirtbag Diaries is probably still the OG, but I think Rick is right up there.
He's right up there. Good episodes too. And I have to say, as I was doing research for this episode, I went back to yours on your directories where the episodes reside, and I love the rapid fire nature, the very pointed conversation, and the fact that you kept these episodes to around 10-15 minutes. I thought, geez, though, that's what I need to do.
I think our shortest one so far is 3 minutes, and that's about 90 seconds worth of intro and outro. The one about shirtless dudes in the climbing gym was pretty much just don't do that. Yeah, I'm a big fan of short content. I think also as an upstart podcaster and someone who's trying to gain an audience, I believe that someone's going to take a flyer on a 5-minute podcast more than a 120-minute podcast if they don't know who I am. So that's the basis of the hot takes. So it was like, and also they're easy to produce. I don't have to tell you that producing a podcast takes a lot of time. And if I got a template going and it's just a matter of I can bang out a bunch of opinions I've had after a long career in the outdoor industry, now I have a way that I can create content and also hopefully make it entertaining at the same time.
Oh, entertaining it is. And I'm really interested too. Maybe this is an offline conversation. I mean, in my intro, I have some music and I'm about ready to upgrade the music. I've had it for a long time. And you have music throughout the episode. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool.
I think sound design matters. I think there's a little bit of, I don't know if you listen to Radiolab. I mean, they go really far with it. And obviously we're talking about a show with a real team of people behind it. But I think if you can do that part of it right, and that's not easy to do. I think sound design, you can go too far with it too, and it can become overwhelming. But I think where you place the music and the timely little effect or a movie quote or something like that can really just push the experience into a different spot. And when even if they're short episodes, it's a narrative podcast. I write every episode. Yeah. So it's not a conversation. Well, I'm going to be having conversations, but the hot takes are a small narrative. So there's an opportunity for the sound design to kind of really make it a more fun experience for the listener.
Sure. How long does it take in general to produce the narrative for the episode?
The writing's the longest part. I mean, and that's because I'll do my best to stay on our time limit for you because I'm a wordy guy and I definitely can sit there and write 6 pages of copy knowing that I really only need about 1.25 pages for what that episode should be. I think when I put the podcast together last fall and when we dropped at the end of December, I already had about 10 episodes done. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, the first few took the longest because it was kind of cracking the template. Here's the music I want to hear. Here's what the intro and outro were going to sound like. So every episode for now kind of matches each other. And then it's a little bit in the middle about like, okay, do I have enough here? Do I want to add something here? But I mean, once the writing's done, I can get the show itself done in just a few hours because I really have created a template for it.
I love it. As my business partner would say, you got to have a process. And in that process, there is a template. I am curious, being able to sit down and write copy, even if it's 10-15 minutes worth of copy, that's hard to do, at least from my lens. And I'm curious, what's your background and is this what you're doing now with Rock Fight? Is this a natural extension of your skills and expertise? So tell us a little bit about the earlier life of Colin True.
That's a great question. It's called the Rock Fight, and I called my company Rock Fight because a friend told me he liked that name as a brand idea because the tagline is because everything is a rock fight.
Right.
And I think there's a positive way. There could be it can be an optimistic or a cynical way of looking at that, but I think there's some truth to it. And so to answer your question, I think that it was a bit of a rock fight. I think I definitely coming out of high school in the early 90s and going into college, kind of the generation of just go to college because you should go to college. And I didn't really have much direction about why I was going to college. I just did. And the best thing I did when I was in college for the few years that I was there was I was a radio DJ, the college radio DJ. Okay. And I actually left school intending to go try and make it as a DJ. And that was really hard in the 90s because radio was big and there were a lot of people who wanted to do that and not a lot of jobs. And instead of just grinding and working my way up, I kind of got a job working retail. And before I knew it, I was in the outdoor industry for 25 years. So, but I'd always enjoyed writing. I was an English major. It just didn't really compare that to where my kids are now, where it's constantly like, look, the world's your oyster. There's so many ways to do so many different things. It's much more socially acceptable to wait to go to college if you want to, find real reasons to go to school, things like that. I've taken a longer route to get there. I have no regrets. My career working for brands like Timberland and Smartwool and Goo Energy Labs and Polar Tech was a wonderful experience, and frankly, gave me the knowledge to do this show because it's all based off of my experiences, both as an enthusiast doing outdoor activities, but also working for those brands and being in those situations. But yeah, it just kind of, I always loved the write, even as I was having that career. Dabbled in some music, dabbled in a lot of different things. And then when I kind of said, okay, that part of my life is behind me now, and I left my last job in about 2017, 18 timeframe, started dabbling with podcasting because it's funny how things come around. At the time, I couldn't get a job as a DJ in the 90s because there weren't enough jobs. Well, maybe not making money doing it, but anybody can have a podcast.
Yeah.
And I thought, let's give this a shot. And so for the past 4 or 5 years, it's been kind of going down this road, and it's pretty wonderful. It's in terms of how it's getting very corporate, I guess, in terms of who can actually have a real career in doing it. Mm-hmm. But there's so many more access points. There's so many more ways to do it. And it really does feel like if you just put in the time and energy, you'll find an audience no matter what you do. And so as an opportunity, I'd much rather write out my episodes than just kind of wing it. So it's been a real opportunity for me to kind of hone my craft as a writer as well.
It's interesting is I can see like the breadcrumbs just little by little getting laid out there in front of you. And by the way, you'd mentioned your interest in music, mm-hmm. and that has to have been an asset for you as you were laying down the music in the intro, throughout the track and the outro, because last night I'm sitting trying to find music on these sites and getting a license.
Right.
I'm doing a series right now. Actually, we're going to, what is it? The Gulf Shores and Orange Beach Tourism. I can say that now because it's actually underway. Yeah. And so I didn't want I didn't want some hip Chicago Northeast kind of music. I wanted something folksy, bluesy. And so it was, and I also wanted to get right into it, like boom, 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 boom. And it took me a long time. And here you've got this background in music, and I could see you every episode. This is what I want. I want to do this. I want to use this. And so that definitely, your background has been a huge asset as you're creating Rock Fight.
Yeah, I think it's the truth, the thing that everybody says, but everyone has a tough time believing. If you listen to the Gary V's of the world and everything, it's like, okay, well, I'm 47 right now, right? And it's like, so my parents' generation, that would be, well, you should be locked in with what you're doing. Why aren't you considering your retirement in 13 years kind of thing, right? And it's like, no, I got a lot of time left to do this. Mm-hmm. And so it has created that opportunity to kind of do something else now as I go forward. And your point about the creative aspect of it, drawing from those other experiences of my life, it has been an asset. And it's a funny thing. I don't know what to tell you if you're going through this. Like you can you can spend days pouring through those catalogs. I mean, it's great that there's all this music available, and for whatever it is, $20 a month, you can have
Mhm.
access to it all, but it can be incredibly overwhelming. And
Right.
sometimes you just have to like, okay, I'm going to pick these four and run it behind the narration and see what it sounds like. And every once in a while, like you do that and you're like, okay, that'll work. Or you move on to the next one if it doesn't work, you know?
That's literally what happened last night. I'm
You're
like,
right.
and as I was going back, as I had read through your site, I had
Hmm.
prepared the show notes because we were supposed to do the episode a week ago.
Yeah,
That's
apologies.
cool. Hey, not a problem. But as I was doing the music, I was actually thinking back to your episodes that you and I are going to chat today. Because I was like, wow, he's got music going through the entire thing. And now I'm like, I want to go back to some of my customers that I produce their podcast for.
Sure.
Let's change up this music. I don't want to do this artificially created sound. We're going to get some good stuff going.
You know,
So,
it could be a throwaway thing, but I mean, it's absolutely a tone setter, right? I mean, the whole thing of these hot takes, like you mentioned, they're short. They're supposed to be kind of fun. My thing on it is it's a informed opinion. So I really wanted something that was a little punchy, a little,
mhm,
but also not. It didn't. It's not a very serious, dramatic score, right? But it is also a very kind of light and poppy, kind of like set the tone going into this. And then when you hear what I'm talking about, hopefully you're in that mindset, right? And if you screw that up, it can screw up a whole episode or a whole show, right?
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. You mentioned approximate age. I'm probably a little bit older than you are. When the family is out with you and you're at the party, everybody's going, "Oh, how are you? What do you? So what do you do?"
Yeah.
Without you answering the question, what does your family say that you do?
Oh, that's see, yeah, good zag there. I don't know what they would say. It's I was because I was put in this position about a year ago when I was producing a podcast for Polar Tech, and I was at a back to school night with my two youngest kids. And somebody asked me what I did, and I chickened out and just said, I'm in sales and marketing. Cause that's what I said for years. And it felt weird to say I'm a writer or a podcast producer.
Right.
And I've spent the past year like just owning that. Like, no, that's what I do. This because it is. That's what I do full time now. Um, but if my kids, I think they would probably laugh and say, I don't know, Dad, what do you do? But it's a little I don't know if they see it as a career choice or just the thing that dad sits in his office and now he's got a sound booth that
Yeah.
he stands in and yammers into a microphone all day. So I would hope at least one of them would say he makes podcasts. I hope that's what one of them would say.
I think that's pretty cool, and kudos to you. I mean, you've got a home studio, like, right in the house or that which is like, that's wonderful. Now, I mean, I'm like, "Gee, how can I get out of my bedroom and, closet?" And, that's pretty darn cool.
Well, I think that comes back to the narrative too. These aren't as expensive as I thought they were. The little tiny sound booth I'm standing in,
Yeah,
and because I primarily do a narrative style podcast,
right.
I think one of the beautiful things I love about podcasts is a conversation like this. If I wasn't on a microphone, if I was just using the speaker on my computer, people are really forgiving on that level of sound quality. I think it's like I never listen. If I hear a guest on a podcast and it's a little, they're on a telephone or whatever, it doesn't bother me. I think that's kind of interesting about the medium.
Mhm,
But if I'm reciting a story, if I'm reading a script, I kind of feel like,
mhm.
okay, I need to eliminate the background noise. It makes a
Right.
difference. So that's why I
Oh,
invested in my little tiny sound booth here.
I love it, and well, that's probably another conversation for another day. I started my podcast in Chicago, and I
Yeah.
lived, at a condo on Michigan Avenue, and I had a mic, not the same one I'm using today, but it was it a condenser mic, I think, the Yeti, the Yeti,
Okay.
and I swear to God, it could pick up somebody sneezing across Michigan Avenue.
Oh, I bet.
And it
Right?
was like, "Oh my god," and I used to joke in the early days of the podcast that the, ambulance or the police car going down the street was a feature of the podcast.
That's right. Just remember, hey, this is a real life location, folks.
Right, we're in dirty, deep in dirty city, you get the full urban flavor. Now, how did I wanna talk a little bit about the layers, which you were doing with
Sure.
Polar Tech. How did Rock Fight come come to fruition? I mean, what was this
Sure.
idea, this insight in the moment?
So it started, so I mentioned I kind of leave my corporate life behind and I started dabbling, and I did about a year and a half. I had a movie podcast and another one where I was just kind of interviewing friends and things like that. And then, and this is sort of the beauty, one of the things I really love about the outdoor industry is you just make lifelong relationships. And these are people
Oh,
that
yeah.
I've worked at multiple brands with and have done lots of things outside with and maintained a relationship with a lot of folks that I worked with at Polar Tech, where I
Mhm.
was the sales and marketing director for North America until about 2017. And their creative director at the time, when we were together, he was creative director. They had just been acquired and he became the VP of marketing for Polar Tech. And he and I actually were started chatting pre-pandemic about could I help him out just because doing some video production, being sort of almost an on-site sort of outdoorsy authority. If somebody else was shooting a video, kind of be the person to be like, no, 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 you wouldn't zip it that way or whatever. Kind of be the behind the scenes guy helping out. Then the pandemic hit, and so we weren't going to be traveling anywhere. And I said to him, like, well, we could do a podcast because you don't have to go anywhere. We have Zoom and computers and microphones. We're good to go. And that led to about a 2-year development, which resulted in Layers, a Polar Tech podcast, which we did a 3-part deep dive into what we called the rise of dressing down,
Mhm.
and kind of chronicling how we've gotten to this place, even pre-pandemic, where you can wear Vans and joggers to a wedding versus 30, 40 years ago. That would have been, you never could have done something like that. And how the outdoor industry and the rise of outdoor sports and active sports and its influence on pop culture and fashion has kind of gotten us to this place. And that was a wonderful experience just for me, because number one, by the time we were done, we were back to traveling and we recorded all that in a studio in Portland, Oregon. And so learned a lot from that point of view. And then we're still hopefully have slated to do something with Layers this year. But as we came out of it, I just decided, you know what, want to do my own weekly show. My company was called Rock Fight, like I mentioned, because everything is a rock fight. And it kind of seemed like a great sort of model for the show, like call it the Rock Fight. And let's pick a fight with things in the outdoor space. There was a kind of a lot of outdoor podcasts are very nice and inspirational. I kind of felt like, well, let's do something that isn't happening right now. And that was kind of the impetus behind the show.
I love it. Your episodes, give us a sample for our listeners
Yeah.
of some of the topics you have broached with Rock Fight.
So far, I think my 2 favorite that I've done just in the last few weeks, especially one was on Jeep.
That was a good that was one of the ones I was listening to.
Oh,
I love
good.
that. I love that.
So, well, that started, and it's funny how things stick with you, right? So my kids pointed out to me how ugly they think the Jeep Gladiator is. And the Jeep Gladiator is the Wrangler with a pickup bed. And call me a, I don't know, a purist of outdoor background of like things should have function and function should matter. I just look at this pickup, like who's using the pickup bed on these Jeeps? You can't put anything in there. Like, what's the point? And you're like, and you take this iconic design and you paired that with the fact that I've always regretted selling the Jeep Cherokee that I owned over 20 years ago,
Oh yeah.
to the point where a couple of years ago, I found almost the exact same model and now I have it. And I'm like, so that's just an opinion. I'm like, yeah, and I just look at the brand Jeep and I think it's very vanilla compared to what it once was. Jeep in the 90s was cool. Like the Cherokee and the Wrangler was super cool. And I don't think they are anymore. and it's okay. I mean, I'm not mad about it. That's who they are. They're probably making buckets of money. So good for you guys, Jeep. But man, Subaru ate your lunch. Like you guys were the brand. So
And by the way, I am a opportunistic podcaster, and I was going to ask you a little bit later. In addition to your headshot that we'll put on our banner,
sure.
I like half a dozen or so photos that I can put on our show notes on our website.
Yeah.
And I want a picture of the Jeep.
Okay.
All right. I want that
Happy.
Jeep.
I love my Jeep.
I love it. And by the way, when I moved to Vegas,
Yeah.
I drove from Chicago, took the southern route with my 2-door 21-year-old Honda Accord. Cars don't mean much to me. They are
Same. I'm in the same boat.
point A to point B.
Yeah.
But when I got here, I started to research rather quickly. Okay, my 21-year-old car just not going to cut it anymore.
Right.
Okay? And I started to research cars. Then I ended up with a Subaru Crosstrek.
My daughter drives one of those. They're great.
I love it. And
It's great. Great car.
Cherry red, and I've done car camping in it. I've probably gone some places I shouldn't have gone in it,
Right, right.
but it's a good little car. And that it was actually part of that research is what led to the Outdoor Adventure series because I was watching YouTube videos, which is what everybody
Uh-huh.
does now when you do research. You watch YouTube videos, and there's a guy had a Subaru Outback, and he was doing car camping in it. And
Right.
then that got into, well, what are all the things you need to go car camping? But so besides the Cherokee,
Yeah.
what's one other episode that you like?
Uh,
Oh,
I,
well,
I
this is great.
I did one on cotton kills because I remember, so in the Northeast in the 90s, if working at Eastern Mountain Sports and outdoor
Mm,
retailers, that was a mantra, cotton kill. You cannot wear cotton in the backcountry because if it gets
right.
wet, it stays wet and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And there is truth to that, right? If it's your last week in top of Mount Washington, New Hampshire, it was over 100, negative 100 wind chill. And if you were wearing wet cotton on that day, that would be a bad thing.
Very bad.
Um, but then when I remember moving west and you go to a drier climate and I realized that like, oh, actually I can probably go for an hour-long mountain bike ride in a cotton t-shirt and I'll be okay. And then I came across about a few months ago that people still say cotton kills and you'll see blog posts of like, you can't wear cotton in the backcountry or you could die. And that's not an exaggeration. These are like what people have written. So I'm like, I'm just, yeah, where's the nuance? Right? It's like and this to me is probably, a larger thing. And if I didn't limit myself to a 5-minute episode, I could probably get into politics and everything else where it's like, hey, not everything is black or white doesn't exist, right? There's loads of gray. And I can wear if I'm doing a 10-mile bike ride from my house on a 65-degree day and the sun's out, I can wear whatever I want and be just fine. But if I know I'm going to a place where I'm not going to have resources, I'm going to be away from civilization, then you are careful and you plan what you're going to have. So it was more just to say, I think we could create a more welcoming atmosphere to new people who want to experience the outdoors. If we don't open with, "Oh, cotton will kill you," so that was kind of the basis behind that episode.
I love it. And it dawns on me that these episodes are your stream of consciousness,
Yeah,
but it's
definitely.
also prompting a potential debate for somebody to say, Colin, you are spot on, man, or Colin, you are full of,
Yeah, I want the full of the shit person. Like I hope,
yeah,
I want you one day to listen to one of these, and even if you understand my point of view, I want to get an email from you going, "Dude, you're wrong." And then that would be the evolution of the show. It's like, okay, here's the rebuttal episode to Cotton Kills, and Howard's going to come on and tell me like, no, 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 this is why you're wrong about this. I'm not laying it down as like everybody needs to change their opinion. I'm just giving you mine. So as the show grows and evolves, I'm welcoming. Please, I'm appealing to your audience. Listen to my show and come on and tell me I'm wrong because I think that would be even more fun.
that would be much more fun. So I'm curious, as I was listening to the shows, and for our listeners, he's got a great intro. There's music throughout. There's a nice outro and music. And I thought to myself, okay, Howard, how are you going to have a nice conversation with a fellow podcaster? I don't want to put him on the spot just a little. Because, by the way, I don't usually put people on the spot. I
That's
don't
okay.
believe in
Let's
that.
do it.
But in your outro, you say, if you want to talk about these topics, come on, let me know. So I have my top, well, I'm calling it the top 10 list, but I think there was only 9 items here. So first one you mentioned, if you want to talk about the best mountain,
Oh, we're gonna go through the list.
we're going to go through the list.
Like, that was purely to give examples of like anything's on the table, but I can come up with something. Let's do it.
You put it out there.
I did.
It's
I did.
history, so you got it. Okay, so what's your favorite mountain?
Okay, if I'm gonna defend a mountain and
Yeah.
what I want to do on that mountain, I'm gonna go back to my northeast. I'm in San Diego, and there's a
Mhm.
million beautiful mountains around me. I love them. I've lived near the Cascades. I've climbed Rainier. I could tell you why the Cascades are great. In Colorado for a year. I lived in Utah for a long time, but I'm gonna say I'm gonna go northeast. Gonna go New Hampshire. I'm gonna say
Mm,
Mount Washington. And,
okay,
because of like, I love that is a place where cotton kills maybe actually applies because
okay.
you really can be at the base of that mountain on a nice day and get to the summit and there's rime ice on there. And it is kind of I've been up that range so many times thinking, oh, it's gonna be a beautiful day. And well, there goes our plans. And I love and it's almost I don't think I'll ever live on the East Coast again, but to all my West Coast peers who just kind of crap all over the Eastern mountains, I always think like, man, I'll take you up into the Whites and you're gonna be hurting. Like those are real hills. Let's go. So I'm
All
going
right.
Mount Washington for my favorite mountain.
I love it. Now, when you are outdoors, this could be by yourself in solitude or with the family. What's your
Sure.
go-to sport?
For a long time, it's been trail running. And as you hear this coming Wednesday on the episode called Running, I'm not
Okay.
going to be doing much more of that. I've had some health issues with my knees,
Okay.
but it's been trail running for a long time. Mountain biking is probably and cycling is my and then surfing too, especially since moving to Southern California.
Yeah,
Um,
you got the surfer dude mystique going, by the
oh,
way.
thanks, buddy. I
Yeah.
didn't start surfing until I was 39, I think, when I started surfing. But it's once you stand up on a wave, you kind of realize, oh, I get it now, and it's pretty special.
Okay. Well, in the mountain biking, see, we, I would need a therapist to have some of these conversations, but I don't have a bike here in Vegas, but I would love one. I did a show a couple of years ago with Rod Chardulo,
Mm.
owns a mountain biking experience business in Sedona.
Oh,
Okay.
you
So,
should go do that.
I was going to hook you up.
Okay.
The mountain bike.
I'll go do it. Let's go do it together.
We can do it together.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, I did a podcast, and he wrote a book called The Trail. It's about the John Muir Trail.
Mhm.
And one of the characters in the back on his pack is just a metal shovel. And the other character, the naive one who had some epiphanies throughout the John Muir Trail
Yeah.
excursion, is why did he bring this useless metal shovel? And to give it away, I'm going to give it away. It's because if I die, you're going to bury me. So my point with doing a mountain bike is like, I'll go a couple miles, but the rest of it, you're probably on your own.
We're bringing the shovel.
You're going to you're going to need to bring a shovel.
No, the joke will be on me because you'll be burying me. That's what's going to happen.
All right. All right. All right. Gotcha. What's your favorite outdoor movie?
My favorite outdoor movie, Point Break. I
knew
did an
you were
episode
going
on
to
it.
say Point Break.
Yeah, I think I did an episode. I think it's the rare occasion when usually you have either the pure adventures film like a Endless Summer, or you have something like a cliffhanger where the outdoor component is kind of a joke. Point Break blended it where made a great action movie where the surfing looks legit. And I like and it's not just because I like to surf too. I just think it's a really lovely combination. And of course, we're talking about the 1991 Point Break. I refuse to acknowledge the 2015 remake. It didn't happen. I don't believe. I know there's a black hole on IMDb if you go looking for it. No.
Yes.
So Point Break.
It's been many years since I've seen it, and if I'm not mistaken, that was Keanu Reeves, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, it's I don't believe in remakes. I think, why? It's like, why do you produce a movie, maybe come up with a sequel? You don't need 3, 4, 5,
No.
6, 7 through 10. No.
Top Gun Maverick proved you just pick up the ball and run with it 30 years later, right? Just make the legacy sequel to Point Break. Don't remake it.
I love it. I love it. Now, I have a favorite piece of gear.
Okay.
What's your favorite piece of gear?
I always go to a PROBAR, and it's one because I worked for PROBAR
Okay.
for about 2 years. I think when people talk about gear, they rarely talk about their food. They usually go to Headlamp or their backpack or shoes or whatever. And I am often, when I'm outside being active, thinking about what am I going to eat next? And boy, when I'm done with this, what am I going to go eat? And the PROBAR meal bars, I will take the Pepsi challenge all day long with any other energy food. I think I would just eat one no matter, like right now, if it was sitting in front of me, and enjoy every delicious bite. So it's my favorite thing to take outside is a PROBAR meal bar.
I love it. I love it. And by the way, as far as thinking about what you're going to eat, that happens to me a lot. I could be on an episode, or when I'm in coaching and I'm thinking about, I am so hungry.
Yep. Always. I'm done with this.
Right. You are the only thing between me and something to eat.
Yep.
I have
What's your favorite gear?
Hiking poles.
Oh, good answer. Good answer.
I have to have hiking poles.
Yeah.
And I do have oh God, it's somewhere around here. I have a Sling water bottle. It's like a rubbery water bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And because I I don't. I have a big backpack that has one of the bladders in it,
Mhm.
and if I have that backpack, I damn well sure. See, I think I'm throwing more than you are. You said you
You are
warned
being
me.
good. I know.
Yeah,
I'll
I'm a.
turn it up. I'll turn it up here in a sec.
I'm like, I got two, you got one. If I'm gonna wear that backpack with that water bladder, I
Yeah.
darn well have to have some stuff in there to make it worth my while, or else
Right.
I'm not legitimate. But I love this water bottle, and I can also hook up, if I needed to,
Mhm.
a filter to it, and it holds like 2 liters. I think you can get them for like 3 liters, and I forget the make of it. It's going to come to me right after the call. For our
Right.
listeners, I'm going to put the link in the show notes.
Well,
But
for
yeah,
your go-to territory there in Red Rocks, hiking poles, trekking poles, and water hydration are two very important components, I would say. It's steep and hot and dry. So,
oh, you telling me. Um, your favorite trail?
oh, God, I got it. Oh, you know
You've
what?
been
I
on
got
a
it now.
lot of them.
No, I got it. Mid-Mountain in Park City. I lived in Park City, lived in Utah for 4 years, Park City for 2 years. And in Park City, the mountain biking, and this is one thing that frustrated me about living in Park City is because 9 months of the year, everything's under snow. But when the snow goes away, the trails are magical. And the Mid-Mountain Trail is about a 25 to 30-mile trail, right at about 8,000, 9,000 feet. Basically goes from Deer Valley all the way over to what used to be the canyons. It's all Park City Mountain Resort now. And it's just a roller coaster, good time, rolly, just super fun single track trail. So
I
we'll
love
go
it.
Mid Mountain Trail in Park City.
Okay. Mountain town.
My favorite mountain town, and I've lived in a couple, and I attempted. I'm gonna go Leavenworth because my favorite all time city is Seattle.
Okay.
So and I already picked Mount Washington in New Hampshire. So I'm gonna go with 2 hours east of Seattle and go with Leavenworth, Washington.
Okay. Now, is that the Leavenworth of Leavenworth fame, or is that no? That's Leavenworth,
No,
Kansas.
that's Kansas.
That's Kansas.
Yeah, that's
I'm
big
thinking,
difference.
gee, I want to go. I want to go ride to jail.
That's right.
Heck.
You can go mountain biking or go to a max security prison. No, different Leavenworth.
All right. Now we're getting into a couple important topics here. Beer.
Yeah. So I've had a lovely craft beer experience. I think my favorite would probably either be look how this one, that's the Georgetown Brewery in Seattle, and this is gonna drive about is it I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to look it up. But
Okay.
I'll let you edit this down because ultimately it comes back as I get older. What I've been drinking mostly lately is like just Budweiser bottles. Like
Oh
I'm
my
20
God.
again.
I,
It's a
I,
Bud
I
bottle, a crisp
there's
bottle of Budweiser
that
is lovely.
that's against the law. That's against the law. I'm sorry. I can't do that. Cannot do that. I see. Growing up, I grew up in Detroit, so we had
Yeah,
Stroh's Brewery.
of
Then I lived in
course.
Chicago,
Yeah.
uh, and the best bar in the United States. I won't say the world because that would be too presumptuous, but the very best bar in the US is in Chicago called Hop Leaf, and they have this phenomenal Belgian beer selection. And I have a lot of friends
Mm,
that are Belgian. So
sure.
Budweiser just
I don't drink much anymore. I feel like I'm constantly doing other stuff. So when I do, it's just an easy drinking beer on a hot
well,
day. Kind of goes
you,
down nice and smooth.
you take Bud, Miller, Coors,
Yeah.
that's the very first beer you drink right after you've come back from your exercise and you're hot, you're
Yes.
sweaty, and you want something cold, but you can only do one because by the time you get to that second beer, it tastes like Budweiser. I can't
That
do that.
you're 100% right. Hold on. You're gonna have to edit this down. I'm gonna get you the name of my favorite
Oh no,
beer out of
I keep
Washington.
the stuff in. I don't
Oh
edit
no.
shit out. Okay, I'm 3 now.
Yes, I'm 21.
All right.
Find our beer. I gotta tell you the name of this because it's driving me crazy. Oh, Lucille.
Lucille.
Lucille. It reminds me a lot of what's the White Russian, the Pliny the Elder, which I do like Pliny the Elder, the
Okay.
IPA out of the Bay Area, but I like it a little bit better. So I'll revise. I do love my Budweiser still, but if I had to pick one, if I'm at Leavenworth, Kansas, I'm going to be executed. I'll ask for a Georgetown Lucille.
All right. I will have to find some way to have a Lucille.
There you go.
Some way. Now I want to not go with the next on the list because I want to end with this because
Okay.
it's one of my favorite topics. So the last one on the list was the campfire song.
Yeah. So my dream is that we have enough listeners and people to come on that I can someday do a March Madness campfire song tournament on the Rock Fight, and we eliminate songs. I start with 64 and whittle it down to one. My current, I think right now that if you had to pick a reigning outdoor sort of, if you the final two, the finals would probably right now be still be Country Roads, Take Me Home Country Roads by John Denver versus Old Crow Medicine Show. What's the song? Old Crow's Medicine Show. Oh my God.
You're going back to the phone. All right.
Yeah. Hold on. Oh my God. This is
we only have the audio, folks. Colin, we're not putting this on the video.
I brought my phone into my studio. Old Crow Medicine Show. Wagon Wheel. My God.
Wagon Wheel. Okay.
Wagon Wheel. But my ride for a song called By and By a band called Camp with 2 A's. And I think that would be the up and coming. That would be the Cinderella of the tournament to hopefully knock one of the big dogs out. Would be Camp By and By. Well, what do you got? You going to stick with John Denver?
I like it, John Denver. It's funny, as I was planning these episodes for the project in Alabama, I was looking for something Southern, and what came to mind is I actually have credibility for this. Every guest that I'm going to interview for this Alabama project, because I lived in Montgomery, Alabama for a year.
Oh, and wow.
That's what I said. Oh, wow. I remember Sweet Home, Alabama.
Sure.
And
that's a good one. That'd be in the tournament.
That would be in the tournament. The Southern Cross by Crosby, Stills.
That's a good one.
That to me, I mean, that just gives me shivers every time I listen to it, especially now you're in San Diego. You've got the harbors, the boats, and the stars. All right, this is the important piece of the list.
Yeah.
I am a big, before I ask the question, you've got a family.
I do.
You all go out camping?
We do, yeah.
A single day or multi-day?
Usually, we've done some week-long trips, but I mean, it's usually like a night out, something like that.
Okay, so when you wake up the next morning, what's your go-to?
Oh, well, I've done some Aeropress, done the French press.
Okay.
Are you talking brewing method, or are you talking about beans?
I haven't specified it yet.
Okay. So I actually don't mind even just like good instant in a backcountry scenario. I kind of feel like when you're out there, it's just like, is it brown and hot and it's going to get the job done. At home, I'm much more of a coffee snob.
Okay, so I know you and I are going to get along because I am a total coffee snob. I roast my own coffee. Do you roast yours?
Excellent. No, that is on the list. I was actually having a conversation with someone, they're talking about brewing their own beer, and I said I will absolutely roast my own beans before I brew my own beer.
Oh yeah, it is phenomenal. The roommate's boyfriend was in town, and we bought Jamaican Blue Moon and Blue Mountain. Blue Moon's a beer.
Yes,
Blue Mountain, and I mean the weather was perfect here to roast the coffee outside. And you mentioned the Aeropress. So the Aeropress, and I'll put a link for our listeners in the show notes. That is my go-to when I'm going out and doing a day out, because it's just so easy.
It really is. Yeah.
And the one thing I don't have that I need to have is the jet boil, because I have a Coleman stove, but the jet boil would be much cooler to have.
Totally.
But I will take some of my fresh roasted coffee, I grind it up, and I have that with my Aeropress, and all I care about is my chair, a table, the Aeropress, and looking at a sunrise.
So prior to my kind of return to Budweiser, and when I would drink more beer and kind of be a little bit more active and going out to bars with buddies and stuff like that, I still would maintain and tell folks, if you made me kick one to the curb, beer or coffee, it wouldn't even take a half a second. I'd be like, no, I drink coffee at least once a day, often multiple times a day.
Yeah.
I'll go days without having a beer. It's like no way. I would keep coffee in a heartbeat. I love it. I actually, before I started getting into podcasting, right when I sort of went into semi-retirement, I spent about 6 months just dabbling with brewing methods and like learning how to do pour overs and kind of just really, do I want to open my own coffee shop kind of idea. And I love going into a really cool hipster coffee shop. I'm just asking the barista, like, what is your favorite drink to make?
Mhm.
Because then they're going to make the thing that they really like to make. It's probably going to be the best thing that they'll make all day, not just the thing. So yeah, I love coffee.
Yeah,
Coffee is the best.
very good. Coffee is good. So we got through the list, lots of great insights, and
Woo!
we'll put the
Couple of Google
answers
searches, but I
on
got,
the
I got
show
there,
notes. The Google searches were okay. I mean, this was not a test. It's like my coaching clients when I tell them take an assessment. There's no right or wrong answer.
Right,
Not a
right.
test. Not a test. So, I mean, you are at the cutting edge with Rock Fight, and you're kind of dabbling to make the improvements in the moment, and
Mhm.
what's my audience going to want, and how can I continue to grow and attract more listeners,
Right.
sponsors, etc. Where do you see yourself though in a couple of years, taking what you're learning and doing
Yeah.
today with the podcast? Do you have a sense of where you might like to see yourself?
Yeah, I really do. I think, and maybe I should have included some of this in the initial questions about the podcast and the company, because the main kind of driver behind, and one reason of doing sort of the hot takes, and the hot takes, like I said, they're not to me ultimately what the show is only going to be. That's almost the foundation. It's a way right now it's just me producing the show. It's a way that I can make sure I hit upload every week by producing something that's relatively simple to produce. Not always easy, but simple. And next, you're going to hear some more conversation pieces coming into play. The difference there being than maybe what you would hear maybe on some other podcasts is I want the subject matter to carry it. It's not so much about the individual or the person that I'm talking to, but it's like, what are we talking to? Right.
Yeah.
So if I want to have an episode about podcasting and I have you on, I'm going to advertise the fact that we're talking about outdoor podcasting. So if people are interested in that, they're going to hear it. And then it's like, I'm the informed host and here's my subject matter expert, Howard. I think the model I'm going after for the company and for the podcast is less and just an outdoor podcast and more looking at what folks like over at The Ringer, people, sports and pop culture podcasts, and what makes them successful. Why is the outdoor recreation industry is almost $1 trillion global industry, and professional sports industry is a $500 billion industry. Yet I can listen to 62 different podcasts about the NFL, and finding outdoor podcasts is a little tougher, right? And it's like,
Right.
why is that? So down the road, yeah, I would hope in a year, 2 years that is the model, that people kind of look at what I'm doing. If I allow myself to dream, yeah, that it's kind of like, wow, this has become sort of the Ringer of the outdoors. If at the end of the day, everyone thinks that, hey man, we don't like your hot takes, and we don't really, your podcast is okay, and a year or two from now, that doesn't pan out, that's fine too, because kind of, I think we were talking about maybe before you hit record, but I really enjoy it. I enjoy it. It's a tough world to play in because you don't necessarily know. Success is difficult to define at times, but I like the writing. I like the recording. I like the performing of the episodes. I like getting a chance
Right.
to talk to folks like yourself. And success really, yes, that'd be nice to get to that pie in the sky place. But ultimately, if a couple of years from now, a few hundred people are listening to this and they get something out of it and I get to enjoy making it,
Mhm.
that's a pretty good place to be as well. And I think that is a bit of a perspective of someone who has lived a life outside. I think we all that's one thing you gain from getting outdoor experiences is that sort of big picture perspective and what's important.
Right.
So I definitely have some goals. I want to see it. I'd like to see it get to a certain place,
Sure.
but if it doesn't, it's a great ride to go on. So that's
It,
where I'm at.
it's truly a great ride. I mean, it's wonderful experience. I can speak to that, and
Yeah,
you
10
know,
years.
you're producing great work, and
Thank you.
love to see where you go, and hopefully every once in a while join you on the journey. So I think we can talk about any one of these in the top 10 list and go from there. So we can do a
Uh,
demo on the Aeropress or pour
yeah,
over in the great outdoors. I love it.
we could do a draft. We'll do a coffee draft. We'll get beans or methods, and we'll have a whole. You can fight to the death over like, no, the Aeropress rules. I'm like, no, the French press.
There you go. It's funny. I bought a Coleman percolator,
Mm,
and obviously you're not going to take that when you go camping unless you are actually physically can put it in a car and take it out of a box.
right.
Uh, but I bought one of those because everybody was saying, "Oh, it's the most authentic smell of the percolator." Brought back memories of growing up, but
Right.
but I'll take the Aeropress. It does the trick, and that's what counts.
You're absolutely, there is something to the experience. I was out doing a hut trip in Washington with a buddy who was really good at making the coffee and and we were in huts and at stoves and stuff, and it was a percolator. And
Yeah.
there was just something about the smell, the aroma, and just picking it up, and there's a weight to it and that hard metal, angular metal to it. I'm with you. But you know what? You're probably right. The Aeropress probably makes better coffee. So
Oh, definitely that. Definitely that. So, Colin, if our listeners would like to learn, actually, you know something? I don't want to do that just yet. By the way,
Okay.
I said 30 minutes. I lied.
I know. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I talk too much.
I have two segments typically on my episodes. One is called the Insight to Go, which is you sharing something with our listeners about your work, your point of view, or in a book, a quote. What would be your insight to go that you would like to share with our listeners?
I think don't take yourself too seriously. I think I definitely am aware that some of the opinions I'm putting out there, I'm sure there's going to be an element of people who think I'm really telling them that they're wrong for feeling a certain way, when more I just think I've had these conversations at outdoor retail or on trade show floors and on the trail with buddies. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from. Again, it's supposed to be lighthearted and fun, but also, hey, it's my opinion. And I think that when it comes to outdoor stuff too, is like the difference is versus following team sports or the professional sports leagues or whatever, is like there is something we can all take from having those experiences. And yeah, I might come back and be like, I think those sunglasses that guy was wearing look dumb. But guess what? He probably thinks he looks great. So who's right here? Not me, the guy who's wearing it, who feels like, wow, I look cool wearing these. So that's just, life is too short. And it's I've been able to kind of wear a lot of hats and try a lot of different things. I've been really fortunate that way and live in different places. And the thing I come back to is I read less news probably than I ever have, and I just got to focus on myself and do the things that makes me happy, because I'm gonna blink and it's gonna be over one way or the other, right? So enjoy it while you got it.
That is fantastic advice. And last piece is what we call our aha moment. I mean, you've had a lot of experiences growing up and lived in different places, and wonderful places, by the way, and just the various sports. As you look back, what has been one of your most recent aha moments that I get to do this, or I can't believe I get to do this?
Hmm.
You can't go to Google for this, by the way.
I know I can't. You really. I mean, it's a little like, I don't want to repeat what I said for the insight. I the answer is usually in the learning.
Right.
Okay, well, I guess the best choice I ever made in my entire life, and I have thought of this. This isn't me just whipping this off the cuff and telling the story. Was when I was 21. I was a college dropout. I was working retail, and I was living in Pennsylvania. I had always wanted to live in New Hampshire, and I packed up. I got a job working at a shop in New Hampshire, and I packed up and I moved.
Mhm.
And that started a cross country tour. Now I'm up to 8 states, and I'm down in Southern California. I think the living in different places, having those experiences. When we moved to Colorado, we were flat broke, had a newborn baby, my wife and I, and we did it anyway. We had a lot of issues, but I never once regretted trying that. We went back to the East Coast with our tails between our legs.
Mhm.
And there's always reasons not to do something. But and this sounds like such a cliche, but it is true. Anytime we have gone somewhere, done something new, it has always worked out one way or another, or we took something away from that experience.
Sure.
So I think the aha is just the only reason I think I'm standing here is because I took some big swings like that.
Yeah.
And I would say take some big swings. I guess
Yeah.
that's probably the best thing I can tell people.
I had a colleague, we used to call him Darth Vader, talk about narcissist, but
Yeah.
he always used to say this one quote from Star Wars, which was Yoda, do or do not, there is no try.
He's right.
Yeah, he was right. He was right. Listen, Colin, before we head out, if our
Yeah.
listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where's the best places for them to go?
Best place is to find the Rock Fight on any podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, anywhere you can find a pod. I would go listen into the pod. We do have a website, rockfightllc.com, that just kind of links to the podcast, both
Right.
the Rock Fight and Layers, if you want to go listen to Layers.
Okay.
And then on Instagram, the Rock Fight Pod. Find us there. We'll be engaging with folks there. Down the road, you'll find us on YouTube and everything as well, but we're not there yet. But yeah, those are the places to find us right now.
Very good. Well, listen, we appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. This was a fun episode. I really enjoyed it. My first inclination is like, what am I going to talk about with this guy? And then as I started to listen to the episodes, oh, I know what I'm going to talk about with this guy. But sometimes you just have to adapt in the moment. And that's why I do a little bit of prep before I do these. So this was,
right? A little, yeah.
it was a lot of fun. I want to thank you again for taking the time out of your day to join us.
Hey, thanks for having me. This was a blast. Enjoyed talking with you as well. And definitely we'll find a reason to debate over on my show. We'll find something.
I love it. I love it. Listen, stay on the line. We're going to do a very quick close, and then you and I can have a final chat. Okay? Very good. All right, folks. We have just been chatting with Colin True, outdoor enthusiast and host of Rock Fight, the podcast. And what a great episode to talk about points of view. And really, part of me is saying we shouldn't be taking ourselves seriously, but we also should have a message that we want to share. And part of the message is get people talking and don't just sit back and observe, but act and have an opinion, even if you don't agree. And that's what I loved about Colin's podcast is all of these topics that he's chatting about. That's his stream of consciousness. That's his writing, his creation. But, it's an opportunity for you to then engage in the conversation through these wonderful short episodes. And I'm really anxious to see where he goes and begins to engage others to join him on the podcast and really further explore a lot of these topics that he is so passionate about. Now, folks, if you want to visit Colin, learn more about his work, obviously the website, rockfightllc.com. We're going to have a link to the podcast platform so you can find him on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. As for us, you can find us on our website, outdooradventureseries.com. We're on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And of course, you can find us on all the podcast directories. Just do a search on outdooradventureseries.com. We'll provide a link to our main hosting site where you can actually jump to the various directories. Okay, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day, and we will see you on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.